Stand by! So there we were, Henry. You get the text from you that's like, dude. That's how Henry texts me. Dude, send. And then I have to wait as he types out what the important thing is.
It's excitement.
Surefire hit us up to come and take part in their XC3 demo product launch and what was also really like a testing and evaluation period for prototype product. Now, first of all, that's pretty amazing because we use Surefire product. We like Surefire as a brand, and so that was pretty cool. But we're always hesitant to do this type of stuff because, Henry, how do these product demos usually go?
Online dating or speed dating is kind of how I see the usual demo sessions go. It is industry media day at SHOT Show. That's why I don't go to those things, because they give you a spiel. They give you like 50 rounds for you to dump like auto down the range. And then you're like, oh, hooray. And then you walk away. I don't get anything from it. Of course, you get a first impression, but much like this speed dating analogy, you don't know your subject within that short period of time. This was not a speed dating environment for this new product, but it wasn't just a product demo, though. I mean, a good part of this, we ended up doing T&E with Surefire and getting a decent amount of training on our end.
When I started actually talking to the Surefire team about what this was going to be, and they're like, yeah, this is actually a full 4-day training course with Matt Pranka of XRayAlpha. You got day and night sessions. Like, that's what this is going to be. We're just going to have our product there that you're going to use while we do it. It was like, okay, I'm in. You got me. the hook was set. All right, I'm in. And what was awesome about this entire thing was it was a bring nothing, just get to this place, and everything was provided. Staccato Ranch, they hosted the event, so it was on their facility. They provided the guns, the ammo. We had Safariland providing belts and mag pouches. QVO provided the holsters. Oakley provided glasses. Vertex provided range bags. We had the Ben Stager Pro Shop providing dry fire targets. So basically it was like show up and it was a fully kitted, like you got a full kit. Right. And then Surefire, of course, provided their new XC3. And we went out and we trained hard. I mean, we shot 1,500 rounds, I think.
At least.
It was a significant amount of training. And what I really enjoyed about it, Henry, and I know we're going to get into it a little bit more, is we dove right into it. There wasn't any like, all right, so this is how we're going to build grip from like a basic level. It was not like that.
By the time I showed up, I didn't know what I was going to expect. I didn't really know who was going to be there. And I showed up and I looked across the room, and especially when we started dropping on range, I quickly realized, yeah, nobody there's a novice at all. And I was actually like, I could place decently at a local match, shooting, pistols. I'm by no means a huge pistolier. I'm mainly focused on rifles. But still, I could hold my own with local matches and stuff like that. But I placed at a lower rung within this group of people. So there was a decent amount of competition. No, there was actual competition here.
Yeah.
For us to
there was
sort of
head-to-head stuff, right?
For
There
us
was
to figure
head-to-head,
out where
right.
we were. You came in second, so it wasn't a super easy stroll in the park for you either.
Yeah, there were some serious shooters at this event.
Yep.
Yes. I felt like throughout the course and the pacing, it was right where I wanted it to be. Like, I was pushing myself, and I felt like I was being pushed, and in a very good way. It was measured, but also like pushing the boundaries, and I thought it was very good. And I think before we get into it, look, it was a 4-day and night course. There's a bunch of information that was discussed, and I want us to sort of talk through a few key takeaways from this event. But before we get to that, there was one piece where everyone's going to ask us, well, how did the XC3 do? And we should probably cover that.
So the XC3, when we first looked at it, I was excited, and then I looked at on-paper stats. I was less excited, but then we took it out, and we were looking at the prototypes. And mind you, these are prototypes. The beam pattern and everything did actually blow me out of the water. I was pretty excited to see that performance in that package. However, this was a T&E session. And as good T&Eers we were, we found problems and were able to break them. So this is what Surefire was looking for. They went back.
Yeah, they said that they had redesigned a few elements that were 3D printed in the prototypes, and then they were, I guess, injection molded and for the finished items. But ultimately, the result of those being 3D printed, as Henry says, we broke some of the devices. So both Henry's and mine went down, and we swapped over to X300 turbos and ultras.
We just got a really concentrated dose of classic Surefire light in staccatos, 4 days, day and night. These were like 12 plus 14-hour days that we were running out there.
So we'll do an entire separate session on the XC3 as well as the TLR7. I want to try to get the new Glock light as well that they pushed out at SHOT, as well as the TLR7, like the bigger TLR7, which has better stats on a bigger footprint, to show the comparatives of these. We'll do just like we've done on the previous videos about light comparisons. We'll literally just go show you what we're seeing on range, and then you guys can assess. But let's pivot really quickly, Henry, back to some of the actual instruction. I didn't quite understand how serious the Surefire team was about this being like a full-on course until we were there.
Yeah.
And then it was literally just like a full-on instruction course.
Yep.
In these types of things, it's been my experience that, with where I am in my shooting journey or whatever, I've heard a lot of information that was said before. I'm also familiar with the curriculum because I'm familiar with the instructor and some of the other individuals who teach similar curriculum, like Steger or Joel Park or Hwanza Kim or whomever, right? Who sort of subscribe to this same ideology or training and shooting methodology. And so I've heard some of this stuff before. In spite of all of that, there was plenty of information I still walked away with going, okay, that was different. That was new. I need to try to implement that. What for you, if you picked like your number one takeaway that you went, like light bulb moment, this thing, what was that for you coming out of this session?
I am not as practiced as Josh is with pistol shooting, and even less so with red dot pistol shooting. I can shoot with a red dot, yes, but you have actively competed and pushed yourself way farther than I have. But sometimes it's some of these things that cleans up your practice. You learn something from elsewhere, and then you have a set of instructions that really cleans it up, and that would be target confirmation. And specifically, the vernacular of saying, what level of target confirmation are you doing? Essentially, is how are you balancing a precise shot versus the dot movement and recoil management. What Matt was talking about, there's different levels of conformation. So there's like you balance it more towards high precision, or you balance it more towards the speed, and you're seeing that dot streak across. And when, as Ben Stagel would say, red meets brown, you smash the trigger type of thing, right?
Yeah.
I've heard that many of times, and I've practiced that many of times, but in my mind, I didn't think of levels of conformation. So depending on the distance, depending on what zone you're trying to shoot on the target, you may want to do a higher level of conformation, i.e. you may want to see the dot more of a dot on the zone that you're trying to shoot at a 25-meter target to be able to get that, that Alpha or Charlie hit at 25 meters, which is not easy. Don't just take it from my word. Do it for yourself and tell me how quickly you can get 6 Alphas or Charlies onto an IPSC at 25 meters. Basically having that clearing up my mind on confirming whether I want to see red-brown smash or if I wanted to see more of a sort of like a squiggly dot shape on the target. That cleaned up my actions or how I perceived my trigger control was going to be in order to balance either speed or precision. I try to think outside. I try to cross-pollinate into different things that I'm doing, right? Because I shoot more rifles than I do pistols. And this is like thinking back on what I'm doing with rifles. The way I shoot practical accuracy and versus the way I shoot speedway are very different. It's same, but it's different, right? So if you look at some of the footage when I'm shooting practical accuracy, specifically the precision side, 700 meters, I'm getting target group sizes that are super tight. That's because I have a greater target conformation. I'm choking in farther on the precision to mechanically push myself on a greater target conformation. Whereas on speedway, I may be running something way looser at like 8 or 10x in order to be able to do the precision rifle version of the red-brown smash and clear the 0 to 500 a lot quicker than I could if I had it choked all the way in. And so that really put myself in thinking more and more, what am I actually trying to do when it comes to distance shooting, and how that correlates between a pistol discipline versus a rifle discipline.
Just to flush that out a little bit for somebody who might not have fully followed what you were talking about, Henry, when you're shooting speedway, the Mark 12 run, right? And you're running that, right? You're hammering, you're going pretty quick. On that, was your crosshair perfectly centered up
Never.
on the target for every shot?
No.
Right. But if you were shooting practical accuracy, you would wait, you would let it settle. It would be perfectly where you wanted it to be, and you'd shoot, because we're really trying to do that with 0 misses, right? We're trying to be perfect and shoot it as clean as possible.
Right. Because I am so much more focused on rifle shooting than you are. You're more of like like you dabble between a lot. That's where my comfort zone is.
Since I started like really getting serious about shooting, I've heard everybody talk about trying to like fight the recoil, eliminate the recoil, drive the gun back onto the target, try to keep it perfectly still through the recoiling process so that your second shot can be faster and hit where you want it to go. My primary takeaway here was that, that in this course, and I think I've taken it and also used it elsewhere, and I'll get to that in a second, but that was specifically, I would say, like frowned upon, right? Matt specifically walked through how there are huge issues with building tension while you're trying to muscle the gun down into position. And so through a recoiling process, right? So if the gun's going off, I have to apply some pressures to return the gun, but I want those to be consistent, right? So it's not necessarily about fighting the recoil. It's just about applying enough force to return the gun exactly to where it needs to go. And having good body position, as you described a second ago, will be the primary, good mechanics, good grip, good control over the gun in general will do 95% of the quote unquote recoil control for you. But when you start to try to apply additional pressures, that's where you run into issues, where you start to see the rounds potentially, being driven low on the target, for example, on follow-up shots. I mean, there's a number of ways that we diagnosed what certain problems were. But I found that was something I was doing when I looked back at old footage of myself shooting. I would constantly, especially on guns I wasn't familiar with, I would see my second shot or third shot in a string start to press low as I built tension trying to keep the gun from recoiling. And there's a lot that goes into that that's vision related, and it's like a trigger where you're triggered to apply that pressure when you see the dot flick up, right? Now, I've really not done a whole lot of pistol shooting since that course, but I've done a lot of rifle shooting at distance. And to your point, we trained with Adrian as well, and I've done quite a bit on my own following that. I was out with Joe at Bruiser for a bit as well, and sort of listening and hearing what he had to say in this area. And I've been pushing the speed as much as I could on these distance targets. And one of the things that I noticed is that when I really tried to completely fight the recoil on the gun and apply and bring the reticle back down on distance targets, I ended up driving it down past the target, and then I would miss my second shot. And it clicked okay, I'm not going to try to do that. I'm going to create a great platform to absorb the recoil, bang, but I'm not going to force or try to fight the gun back down as I see the reticle rise. Instead, I'm just going to sort of let my body do what it's meant to do. When I do it right, the gun returns. And then the reticle is right back where I want it to be on the center of the target. And I've been able to really push my split times and speed at distance. I would attribute that realization to some training that, again, we did with some of these long range guys, but also at the same time going back to this base principle. Look, again, there was a lot more talked about. I gained a ton of brand new knowledge about weapon light usage. And Matt's a Delta guy with tons of experience. He's also a grandmaster shooter. So this is a dude that's very capable. And so there was a lot about the white light use, how to activate it, when to activate it, how to use the buttons, how he did it. That I got, that was brand new information. That was not I know what we're doing here and it's just refining some stuff. That was brand new for me. And so that was also exciting. Also, sort of expected when you're at a Surefire event, I'd suppose.
So I think a lot of these skills, as military, you don't learn. As a USPSA practical shooter, you don't learn. But these are highly practical skills that we would actually potentially use in a life or death situation far more. Proper control of illumination. Maybe law enforcement would learn more of this than we would. And so it was really interesting having that level, jumping straight into Matt Pranka's level of instruction with all this. And for those out there who are wondering, I mean, it's a rarity to have someone who is both accomplished on the military and the sporting side. I mean, a lot of times you see one side or the other. Rarely do you see both sides come together, and especially rare do you see someone who has both sides come together and they could instruct people and pass that type of knowledge to people. So this opportunity to me was incredibly valuable. It was a huge insight into, not just the products, but the craft itself. And really interesting that you and I had different ways of translating these things into different things that we do. So I thought it was cool.
All right, gang. Hopefully you got some value out of that. Think through if any of what Henry and I took away is applicable in your shooting. And until next time, we'll see you on the range.
716, this is Jonet 6, 4 Vic, 8 packs, Redcon 1, green to green. How copy, over?
796, this is 716, roger, over. 16, 091, 1 pack, green, green.